Good, all good. So let's get this fired up. Fire it up. Fire it up. We've got the barbecue going. We've got the spit. We've got the meat on the fire. I'm not going to say what meat we got on the fire because it is a
Long
perfect
pig.
long pig. That's right. We've got some log pig on the spit, and I got some barbecue. Did some marinade, and yes, folks, we are having a meal to celebrate another Perfect 10 episode here, where we're looking at films that are celebrating their 10th anniversary. At the same time, we're celebrating our 10th anniversary here on the Spoiler Room. And tonight, we've got a tasty morsel for you in the form of yes. There's gonna be a lot of food puns. Bear with me. That's what you get. Okay, just deal. Just deal with
No
it.
spoiled leftovers, though.
No spoiled leftovers. No, that you don't leave the leftovers. No, and they smell the fridge up anyway. So you can't really yeah wrap them. Put a lot of salt in it. Saltpeter. There you go. Peter, saltpeter.
Penicillin on the bread. Nah, that's salty enough.
Oh, wait, there isn't a character named Peter. But anyway, enough of that. Thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, and cracking open your favorite drink as we talk movie spoilers. And tonight we are looking at the Green Inferno 2013, ladies and gentlemen. Hence all my cannibal jokes. I even got Cannibal Apocalypse vinyl displayed in the back here. And I've got a wonderful group of folks here who are hungry to talk about this film. First off, you hear her. She's back with us in the spoiler room. It's none other from the horror retrospective. It is Kara. Hello, Kara.
Hello. Glad to be back. It's always fun hanging out with you guys.
Always fun to have you in here, and especially when we're talking horror. And this is going to be, I think, a fun discussion. And then also back with us, the OG spoiler room member, the diva of the spoiler room is back with us after coming back from parts unknown. It is none other than Dawn. Hello, Dawn. Glad to have you back.
Glad to be back. Hello, everyone.
Happy. And there's a great, if you don't catch the Patreon, I've shared my story of viewing the Green Inferno, and I'm going to share it again, so just deal. But Dawn was there, so she could corroborate some of my things, so you don't just think I'm talking out of my ass. And speaking of not talking out of his ass, he's always talking, giving great opinions, and coming back for more. I don't know why, but it is none other than Mr. Ian Simmons. He is with us today from Kicking the Seat. Hello, Ian.
Mark, I like this show sometimes more than I like my own, so it's always a pleasure to be here.
well, cheers, sir, and thank you for joining us again for this film from Eli Roth. If you're not familiar with the story of it 10 years ago, well, Dawn will be happy to give us a synopsis of the Green Inferno.
I figured you were going to do that.
You don't
right.
have.
Oh,
You
no,
do always have
I'm
the
good.
option. You always have the option.
Okay.
Okay.
So, The Green Inferno is a story about a group of naive, well-intentioned, but utterly stupid activists from Columbia University who go on a trip to Peru to protest a development company that is bulldozing part of the rainforest. The stunt ends up going not awry, but differently than everyone except for the two ringleaders expected. And after they're arrested and subsequently released, as they're flying back to the States, their plane crashes and they are set upon by one of the Amazonian tribes that they were there trying to protect. And then they're taken back to the village for a nice little meal.
For dinner.
Mm.
Where they're on the menu, yes. This gained a reputation instantly. They showed it at, I believe it was TIFF, to where stories were coming out that people were fainting and throwing up, and other showings had the same thing. And yeah, so it's Eli Roth's homage to the cannibal Holocaust, cannibal apocalypse. Insert Italian cannibal film here, and that's what he's kind of giving an ode to. And does it fly in the modern age? Well, let's find out from our panel. First off, Kara, do you remember when you first saw the Green Inferno?
I did. I watched it when it was first out, and just to touch back on something you said really quick about people vomiting, my first thought is, because I loved all of the gore, that was fantastic, but if you can't stomach the Green Inferno, you're a wimp.
Agreed. I am with you on that. And Mr. Ian Simmons, your first time watching the Green Inferno?
Like 3 days ago. I'm generally an Eli Roth fan. I never got around to watching this, and I know we had discussed which version to watch. My wife rented it from the library, so they only had the unrated version. So I watched that, and it's strange because I'm watching this thinking, what the hell's the R-rated version like?
No.
I'm just so, maybe I'm jaded because I'm kind of here with Kara. Like, after you've watched movies like Martyrs or Inside, stuff like Cannibal Holocaust might as well be on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Not Cannibal Holocaust, Green Inferno. I'm gonna mix this up, you know. But it's like, maybe it's also because it's more like an anthropological kind of horror film where, yeah, these people are being butchered and cut up and everything, but they're being processed kind of like food, and it's almost like watching a nature documentary.
Yeah.
It's I can't quite explain it, but I'm just sitting there like fascinated by the ritual of the whole thing, and not like, oh my God, this is so gross, they just plucked out his eyes. I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. Oh, she ate them. That's kind of cool. I wonder what that means in their culture. Yeah.
and that's perfect, because I think that's actually how he's approaching this. And if anything, it's Eli Roth thumbing his nose at the audience going, are you actually paying attention to what is going on here versus focusing on possibly the wrong things? Dawn, you remember when you first saw Green Inferno, don't you?
I certainly do, and I have a feeling you're going to be telling it much more amusingly. But yes, I vividly remember that particular movie we went to.
Yes. Dawn can corroborate.
Oh yeah.
It's funny because the Green Inferno was getting a limited release, and I didn't think a theater in central Wisconsin would be showing it. And then I looked at Marcus Theater in Wausau. God bless them. They show the Fathom events, and they showed the Green Inferno. And I'm like, oh my God. Now, I had some personal stuff with my mom way up north that I was dealing with, and I timed it out. I'm like, well, I got to drive back Sunday. And I called Dawn. I'm like, Dawn, you want to see the Green Inferno? She's like, well, yeah. And I'm like, okay. So we meet at the theater. I came from far north from my mom's place, and she came up. We watched it. And it was hilarious because the Green Inferno screening was in the furthest screen away from the entrance that you could possibly get at the Marcus Theater. In the quarter theater, in one of the what you could call Cracker Jack screens, to where it was one of the smaller theaters that could fit like 40 people maybe in it, you know. It was this is the type of theater, and Don, you remember it. It's almost like one of those theaters like you see at the museum, to where they have like a limited seating, and they got the screen and they show the nature thing. That's how small this theater was, and it's in the far back corner, right? And so we're there, and Dawn and I are there, and 4 other people are there. Surprisingly, 2 elderly couples, which I did not expect to see as the target audience to watch the Green Inferno. But I'm like, okay, hey, you know. And when we get to the cannibal parts, which we'll dive in further in a bit, I was snickering and stifling my smiles and rocking in my chair. And Dawn, I think she was as amused at my reaction as...
You weren't stifling very hard.
I wasn't stifling very hard. No, okay. I was thoroughly enjoying the outrageousness of this film. But what's great is and I remember this distinctly because it's the only time it's ever happened. When the film was done, we're leaving, and the assistant manager and an usher were there. And I'm like, and the assistant manager, I believe, was there to possibly take any complaints that might be from the audience from seeing the Green Inferno, and the usher was just there to clean the aisles. But it's the first time I ever saw the assistant manager waiting at the end of the movie for people to come out and possibly complain. So yes, we have our Slacktivists. Aw, that sounded like a kitty.
Sorry, that wasn't my end.
Oh no, that's okay. I'm like, I don't think my cat's here. He like maybe from beyond, but so we have our Slacktivists. We have Justine, who is the daughter of a UN lawyer going to Colombia, and you have her friend Casey, and then you have this group of activists run by a very attractive gentleman. And yeah, Justine wants to get involved. And Lorenza Izzo plays Justine. And Dawn, what'd you think of our Justine?
I liked the performance Lorenza Izzo gave. I thought she was really great. Both she and most of the cast had just come off working with Eli Roth on another film. So you could really tell they had a lot of comfort, and they already had a relationship built among them, which was nice.
What was the other movie?
Was that Knock Knock?
No, it wasn't Knock Knock. Knock Knock was after.
It was after, that's right.
I want to say Aftershock, or
It was Aftershock, yes.
Aftershock.
Oh yeah, Aftershock. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay.
Because even the guy who played Justine's dad was also in Aftershock.
Right. That was a fun movie too. I enjoyed Aftershock. But yeah, they do have great chemistry. I like Lorenza Izzo in here, her Justine character. Not only the way she was written, but also, her performance in here. Ian, what'd you think of Justine?
I mean, she was great. I mean, I think all the performances, even the annoying characters, I think they were, understandably annoying rather than just like, I'm glad this person's a dead meat. But yeah, she was a real standout. Because I know she was also in Knock Knock. This is the first thing I think I've actually seen her in. I've heard about other movies that she's been in, but after this, I'm like, I want to go watch those other films because she was great. And particularly at the very end, when she's, I know I'm jumping ahead, but when she's giving testimony towards the end of the picture, I'm like, this is really interesting because I'm conflicted about what she's doing, but she's also really selling it. And I don't know if she's, what her motive is, until kind of the very end of it. But yeah, she's a hell of an actress.
She is. Cara, what about you and Justine? Did you like Justine?
I liked her. I thought it was a good character. My only complaint was that she went into this whole thing just because she liked an unavailable guy who was unattractive.
You didn't like Alejandro?
Nah, not fancy enough. I mean, if you throw some Ricky Martin in there, maybe. Like, move those hips.
Well, he moved some hips at some point while being... Folks, this film for the first half hour is kind of like you're watching these kids make the dumbest decision in their college career. You're like, Ian, you're watching them come up with this plan to go to Peru to strap themselves to bulldozers. You're just like, well, I'm all for activism. You're like, you guys see who you are, right?
Well, no, I mean, and that's the thing is Eli Roth is kind of poking fun at this, but we've seen examples in recent years of college age idiots doing things like, hey, I'm going to splash tomato soup on, a Renaissance painting to protest, oil or some nonsense. It really captures, I think, the naivete of 18 to 20-year-old, liberal college, kids who are just kind of stepping out in the world. They want to save everything. And they're like, hey, I can go to Peru. It's probably being paid for. I'm going to see the world and make a difference. Why not? When they reach those little moments of disillusionment throughout the trip, as they realize more and more that they're stuck. And even the point where Alejandro says, look, this is when they're on the ground in Peru. He's like, look, if anyone wants to leave, you can go back. And none of them do, because of that fear of the peer pressure and stuff. That felt very real to me. So they're not idiots. They're not, just teenage slasher movie dead meats. I think Roth really captured that kind of youthful naivete and that zest for wanting to make a difference and getting caught up in that whole further. It's funny and sad because it's real.
What do you think of that, Cara? You think that's kind of a real portrayal of young college kids?
I'd say it's pretty realistic. I mean, even when I was in college, I mean, I was pretty naive about a lot of stuff. And I mean, they got a rude awakening as far as how the real world works. And even the fact that Alejandro had this ulterior motive. I mean, he was just like a snake in the grass the entire time. It was just, as Justine says, a photo op for them just to get more recognition for the organization, even though Alejandro knows they really won't even make an impact because somebody will come in later and still bulldozer the area down.
Yeah, I agree. He captured that well. I mean, Dawn, we live in a college town, right? I think
we do.
He captured some of this very well to where people have the best intentions, but the common sense or the experience is not there.
I actually think it goes farther than that. I think what he did was he created a predator, and a predator who looked for and found the most naive, vulnerable people among the wannabe activists or the activists, people who actually were so lost, as was shown by the girl who, with the scars on her wrist, had obviously tried to commit suicide, by the drug addict, the Spy Kids boy, the Justine, who was young and naive, led a very sheltered life, the daughter of a UN lawyer, the redhead, very disillusioned. I think that the poor chubby in love boy. I think that Alejandro and Cara, his lady love, very, very deliberately picked affluent, needy people among those activists to go down to Peru, knowing that nobody else with a brain would go.
Right. And you're absolutely right. And actually, that is evident when we first get Justine at the first meeting. Excuse me, because she didn't want to actually go, but she was convinced by our guy who's got a crush on her. I forgot his name offhand. Jonah. I loved him. Unfortunately, he's the first to become a meal. But Jonah, I love the fact, he's just he wants her to get involved, invites her to the meeting, and then she gets there, and the minute she brings up a counterpoint to what Alejandro comes up with, Mr. Alpha, he kicks her out first. He's like, no, we don't want that dissident in here, because she's just like, oh, what are you guys gonna do out there? You're gonna, just hunger, she makes a valid point of their plan to go to Peru. She's like, this is kind of a dumb idea. You guys are doing there's a better way to do this. And he kicks her out. Then he has her come back the next day, and we realize it's not fully like completely. And that's what I like the way Eli Roth handles this, is if you're paying attention, you get exactly how she puts things together on why she's actually on this trip, even though she initially showed dissidence, if you will, which isn't. She just questioned, why are we going to Peru to do this? Because she's a UN lawyer's daughter is the whole reason Alejandro has her along.
Right. And I really like Richard Burgi, who plays the father. He was also in apparently Aftershock, which I haven't seen, but he was also in Hostel 2.
Right. Yep.
Playing a very different kind of character. But man, that guy, when he gets into a suit, oh my God, he's amazing. But what I liked about his performance, and he's only in the movie for about like maybe 8 minutes of the whole time, and it's very front loaded, but he's the dad, he's a UN lawyer, but he is very like compassionate and concerned about his daughter's well-being. It's very easy to write and play that character as like, you know, some Wall Street asshole or something, but that he definitely looks the part, but he gives her every opportunity. I think that's part of the problem is she's had every opportunity growing up, and she kind of wants to prove that she's not, you know, this spoiled brat who could, you know, just write a check or something. She wants to do something to make a difference. And I think that really comes out in his character as well. He helps to inform, you know, her character, and through him we can see some of what she's made of that comes out throughout the rest of the film. That's the thing is like, this is, I think, Eli Roth of what I've seen of his movies. It's his most mature work, but it's kind of written off as like, oh, it's his Cannibal Holocaust ripoff.
Well, and he manages to work the humor into the serious parts, because we get this, he edits this scene beautifully, because I mentioned to Dawn, first off, he sets up the privilege setting. We've got the very white, stark museum setting and everything in the higher fancy place where he's going to have dinner with his daughter. It's a very fancy place. But we set up these scenes that it's very clean, very white, very in more ways than one white. And, you know, and then we do this edit between these two characters, the father and the daughter. And then at the very end, we go to this wide shot and we find out her friend Casey has been sitting there the whole time while they've been having this very serious discussion about her mom and that. And I just love it because it's played for a joke, but it's not like lightening up everything. It was just like, oh, her friend is there. She's everywhere, you know? And I loved how that played out. And I think he sets all this up with the clean cut and the fancy stuff to be the, pardon me for making lakes out of puddles, but the juxtaposition of what happens to this whole group when they get into Peru, and everything is more nature. There's dirt. They've got to go crap or pee in the woods. You know, a Spy Kid boy nearly gets his willy bit by a tarantula. You know, I mean, I think he sets up the contrast between civilization and the wilderness very well. What do you think, Cara?
I mean, I kind of liked it. You know, the redheaded guy, he was pretty squeamish about going out there. Justine was just like, you know, screw it, I have to go. And she just grabs the machete and runs out. Whereas, you know, Spider Boy, he takes, what was it, 2 or 3 shots at the innocent spider?
Yes.
I'm like, keep your willy out of the spider's face.
Just move. All he's got to do is turn. The spider's not going to like hop on his willy and bite it like, ooh, worm. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a drunk girl on New Year's Eve. It's not going to just pounce.
Oh, wow. Wonderful metaphor there. But Don, did you like this setup that he did for the difference between civilization and roughing it in the actual Amazon?
Absolutely. I did like the whole visual of privilege and upper crust culture as opposed to the complete opposite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so we get them coming back on their plane. You've got Alejandro lying the shit out of them, saying, hey, we made it worldwide and they're going to stop the bulldozers and you guys did a great job. And yeah, let's pop the, you know, filling their egos. And then we get this it's okay. It's horrible. I'm going to state right now, it is a horrible event that happens, and people and characters do die. On the other hand, the film watcher of me, we get this wonderful plane crash scene. Which, Dawn, what'd you think of the plane crash scene?
I love that scene so much. Every time I've seen that scene, I just sit and watch, and I see something a little bit different because you're there's so much to focus on. You've got the guy who pops himself in the face and is bleeding all over the place. You've got the different girls who are having various reactions. And then when people start popping out of the plane, there's even more to look at.
And even when it finally lands on the ground, it doesn't stop there. Things are still going on. Ian, what'd you think of this plane crash?
I mean, it was really good. It reminded me. I mean, some of it reminded me a bit of like the pilot from Lost, particularly the one guy who turns around and the propeller is still going and it chops his head open. But the one thing that kind of bothered me though is there's a great scene where the plane is spiraling and it's turning upside down, and the actors are actually turning upside down, and Jonah throws up on himself. And it's talk about The Exorcist, right? I loved it too, except 5 minutes later when they're on the ground, he's like going to help Justine out. His face is completely clean. Like there's
he wiped it off of his shirt. Who knows?
No, that stuff would be in his hair and in his soul. It's not just coming out.
In his soul. It'd be in his soul.
But minor flubs aside, it was pretty spectacular. I like that, bodies would just like fall out of trees because before the plane hits the ground, it's the people are flying out as you mentioned earlier, and we kind of find them also later in the jungle, because the tribes people have found them and kind of brought them back to the airplane and put them up on pikes, as I guess kind of a warning or something. It all works. It's Eli Roth is so good at these giant set pieces of gore that the tree going into and taking out the pilot, with that beautiful watermelon head splash, like, oh god, so good.
Did you like this plane crash, Cara?
I think it was really good. I mean, I took it as very realistic. It had great tension. Since it was my second time watching, I wasn't really like worried or concerned for them, but I did like how they reacted. Definitely. It was funny about the Jonah thing, as Ian mentioned, and it kind of plays on the fact that I think in my mind, at least, he's kind of like a little bit of a prissy boy. He's very effeminate. He tries so hard to be accepted, but all of these things keep happening to him, and he's kind of like the Franklin of the group, like from Texas Chainsaw. He annoys everyone.
Not quite as annoying, but still annoying everybody. You're right. You're absolutely right. And Justine's just too nice to like shirk him.
And I also wonder if that was an in-joke on Eli Roth's part, because they talk about how, he's the first to go once they get to the tribal camp. Then the one guy's like, well, it's good that they ate him first because he could feed them for a week. And I'm like, his name's Jonah and he's kind of a whale. Oh,
yes,
Eli.
yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if there was any symbolism to that.
There might be. And Eli Roth even throwing, that's what I like about, I think people don't quite, you got to pay attention to some of the humor and stuff he puts in here to help lighten things, because we get this wonderful and very intense and very thing, you get the throw up, which is kind of funny, but then you realize these people are actually like getting seriously hurt in the plane crashes, and there's tension, especially the first time you see it. And then you get the watermelon head, which is beautiful. And then, everybody's getting out, and it's kind of meant to be a serious moment, like usually you would get with an aircraft crash. But then, like you said, Ian, and I think Dawn mentioned, you get the guy who's like, oh, where's such and such? We got to go find him. And he walks right into the rotating blade of the plane. And you're like, oh, but at the same time, you're kind of chuckling a little. and then you get a few more serious. You see how hurt some people are in that, and everybody's kind of crying and upset. And then the guys, oh, we should go this way. And then you get the girl who falls out of the tree in the chair, like face down, like boom, with the neck break. And it's that dark humor to where he's making you laugh in spite of yourself, I think. And I appreciate that type of humor quite a bit. And that's throughout this film. That's not just there. It's later on when we get into the cannibals too, the tribe. Dawn, I think you mentioned about it. We were having that discussion in the chat earlier today a bit about the tribe and how it's interesting how they portray it, because there doesn't seem to be anything hugely malicious with this tribe. This just seems like their business, doesn't it?
Exactly. I think it was Ian that mentioned that.
Yeah.
There doesn't seem to be anything malicious about them. They're just doing their thing. We don't know why, because there's no subtitles. It could just be it could simply just be their culture. That they could be trying to communicate, saying, hey, we're gonna eat you if you don't, because you're the bad guys that are tearing down our forest. Maybe you're not, but you got to tell us you're not. But there's no way to communicate that.
Right. I mean, that's the thing, is like Alejandro seems to have an idea of what's going on, possibly because he's been in this area with some of his, partners. But yeah, I can't remember what context it was, but he tells one of the other captors, like, yeah, they think you're the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, there's this idea of this tribe or this culture, because it's quite a considerable number of people. There's dozens and dozens of them living out in this forest. But the idea that they are so committed to secrecy and not being discovered. There's so many heads on spikes and, skeletons and stuff all around this place. You get the feeling that, kind of like Jason Voorhees, like anybody who comes across that area, they're not getting out to tell anybody about, who they are. So we don't need to know what they're talking about or, what the idea is, because they found dinner for, a couple weeks, and they're going to keep them and feed them. And it really does become like a metaphor for, I guess, the way that we, bring animals in, we raise them, and then we eventually slaughter them, and we, spread them around as fast food.
Yeah. But they even had pigs for food, and I loved those little piglets. They were adorable. I half thought the pigs were going to start munching on the people because they threw them in the same corral.
That's a good point. And also, you can have like turkey wrapped bacon. I can imagine that, or bacon wrapped turkey. You do that. Those were the prisoners, and then the pigs with the garnish.
Yeah, there's definitely some turkeys in this group. But yeah, when our slacktivists get into the tribe area, that's the last hour of this film. And yes, there is the gore, which is wonderful. Ian, we watched 2000 Maniacs. I think everybody here has seen 2000 Maniacs. When they're cutting up Jonah, it felt like 2000. Like when they first cut off his one arm, I'm like, that felt just like 2000 Maniacs, didn't it?
I won't lie. I actually counted. It took 5 hacks for everything to come off.
5 hacks per limb, or
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there was one that came off with 4. I don't remember which one, but it was an average of 5.
I love that.
Well, here's the thing, because I've only seen this the one time. I remember the people in the cages, the prisoners, screaming at what was happening to Jonah. I don't remember much of a reaction from Jonah. Was that because they had blown that dust in his face as sort of like a tranquilizer or something before they held him down, or was he just like screaming? I just couldn't discern it from the other people.
I think he was very naive. Like, they gave him that bowl to drink out of, and instead of questioning or saying no, he's like, thank you.
Well, he was concussed too. So he was still concussed from the crash. So he was kind of wobbly to begin with. And then he doesn't realize his buddies have been put into the cage because he's out of it, and they're giving him something to drink. And hey, great, because they've been kind of in the woods and been through all this, not realize, because they lay him down too. He's like, look,
Yeah.
this is
Well, yeah.
nice bed.
The dust blowing was Daniel at the end, right before the ants. But yeah, you're right. They gave him this thing to drink, and I was wondering if it was like a narcotic or something to, make him less resistant to get him down.
I think it was. I think it was a narcotic just to get him down, because when he drank it, he started to get real woozy, and then he just laid down, and he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, this is great." And then all the men in the tribe came up and they're like, held him down.
Yeah,
they got to cut him up.
I think that's the only point where he started to become concerned. Like, why are you holding me down? What's going on here? And it's kind of like, dude, you're waking up a little too late.
And it's where they pop the eye out. She has,
Yeah.
He keeps an eye out for the priestess,
Well, he was all googly eyed over her.
He was. He was, and then he wasn't careful, so it cost him an arm and a leg. So, sorry. Don, what'd you think of the first kill that we have here with the chopping up? Did it feel kind of like 2000 Maniacs in some respect?
Oh, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It looked like it too. I mean, that's the thing is he goes practical effects with all of this, and you kind of need to, and at the same time, I think it helps with it. But again, you don't feel like the tribe's doing this like this is their business. This is their routine. You're the bad guy. We're doing this. It's not like these folks are evil. And I think that's what he handles, is that we perceive what they're doing as evil, but their intent doesn't feel evil. It's like they're protecting themselves, because they do think they're the enemy, because they're still in the yellow outfits when they find them. Most of them are still in the yellow outfits, which the tribe would associate with the guys with the bulldozers. So you could see why they did this. And then we get to, and Cara, what did you think? We get to the female inspection part of this.
Oh, yeah. Well, just really quick,
yeah,
because I agree with Ian, it kind of touches on a lot of those anthropological things.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like you have to pull yourself out enough to actually view things from the tribe's point of view in order to actually realize, well, they're not as barbaric as we see them. I think a good companion piece to this would probably be Bone Tomahawk, where they're just equally as aggressive.
Oh yeah, Bone Tomahawk. There's one that that's a double feature. Oh man, that brutality. Woo.
But yeah, I mean, getting back to your question, I think they chose Justine because she was testing all of the girls, and I think they chose Justine because she was probably a virgin. Like they reacted to her differently than the other two girls. So right. I believe she was chosen for a reason. And I kind of feel like maybe they wanted to indoctrinate her into the tribe. The fact that she was being chosen to be mutilated or to be cut, as they stated it. I get the impression that they wanted to keep her, like she was well suited for, what would you say, breeding.
Yeah, what'd you think about? Oh, go ahead, Ian.
I was going to say, yeah, because it was there was a little bit of, I think, confused messaging or symbolism, whatever you call it, because in the college portion of it, they do have a lecture where they're talking about female genital mutilation, and they have like a slideshow and stuff. And I noticed the nice bit of foreshadowing right before they cut the scene. They're like, and then there's the ritual of the ants, and it like cuts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I took from the lineup scene, where it's Justine and the two other female survivors at that point, was they were taking this hooked kind of dagger or something and running it up there, and Justine's is the only one that came back bloody. So I assumed that, yes, as you mentioned, that she might have been a virgin at that point, and that's how they could tell. And so the next, what they're preparing her for, might have been that ritual that we saw or was alluded to in the beginning. But yeah, I don't know what they, you're right. It didn't seem like they wanted to kill or eat her. So if she had just stuck around, I mean, she probably wouldn't have wanted to be with that tribe, but she might have been in for, a fate not worse than death. But again, she might have assumed that they were going to eat her, but they might have had different plans in mind, which kind of opens up the imagination to like what could have happened if she hadn't been able to break free at the end.
Yeah. What do you think, Dawn?
Oh, I think, she said, Ian is absolutely right about the foreshadowing. She absolutely knew that what she was in for was the FGM, the female genital mutilation. She obviously had a very strong reaction to that in class. And yeah, there's tons. I mean, every single major event in the movie is foreshadowed heavily. Every single major event is foreshadowed heavily. Anyway, but yeah, she definitely knew what she was in for. And I really think she did think that the female FGM was a fate worse than death, because she probably would have died a horrible, horrible death from it.
Yeah, possibly.
Well, I mean, maybe. I mean, that's where there's this weird inconsistency, because in the college lecture they're talking about this in, I think it was an African tribe, completely different part of the world, and if the idea is this Peruvian tribe in the Amazon is completely cut off from everybody, that kind of begs the question: how would they know about it unless it was like one of those coincidental like things that just kind of develops over human history, which I don't know anything about that.
It actually happens all over the world in tons of religions, not just in Africa, in Asia, Islam, in South America. It happens everywhere.
Sure, I understand that, but I'm saying if the idea is this is a completely undiscovered people, like, or has not been, you could almost do an entire movie about the origin of this tribe and all this other stuff, but it's kind of like, how did that idea get into that? Yeah, I understand culture and religion and stuff. That stuff usually is mimetic. It spreads. If this is something that's been cut off from the wider world since the beginning of time or whatever, how would they, like, where do these rituals come from? It's just stuff to think about. I like that, but I do wonder, like, if that would have actually been her fate, or if they were, we as the audience, we have that association from the college lecture, but if things had played out without the escape, would they have had something completely different in mind that we just aren't aware of?
They might have. I think it might have been a variation. It might not have been exactly what they talked about in the lecture, but she knew something was going to happen because the way they had the blade and everything, and she was saved by the fact that a construction worker was caught by the natives, and they were a lot closer to the tribe, so they stopped just short of doing whatever they were going to do. Which again, yeah, Don, you're right. Everything is pretty much telegraphed, which isn't a bad thing. I always like when they bookmark and bring things back around. So there was something going to happen, and she didn't want that. But thanks to her little flute whistle that she got from her mom, so her mom, who passed away, saved her, in all honesty, because with the flute, she was able to befriend a little bit of a young tribe boy who was the one who helped her get out of these stirrups and such, so she could escape whatever fate she was going to have near the end there. So yeah, it's interesting to see, but you're right. They did pick her because she was virginal. Maybe they were looking at working her into it because it is such a closed tribe. While they don't know genetics, they might be looking at, fresh new blood, as Kara said, someone that could possibly bear children and bring, a fresh bloodline into the mix. Even though she's from Columbia College, but
there you go. You've got Colombia and Peru.
Colombia and Peru. Nice. I want to jump back before we get into the kills and the things that happened in the cage, because I do want to talk about the things that happened in the cage. But before that, I want to jump back to when they're doing the whole thing with the streaming and in front of the militia and the blowing up of things and that, and how the kids were kind of surprised. And Justine's lock wouldn't lock. So I want everybody's opinion here, and see if they think the same thing I do. I'm gonna reserve my opinion at first. But Dawn, was she given a defective lock on purpose?
Oh, absolutely. And you can see that because Jonah tried to give her a lock and Kara pushed it away and gave her a different lock. It was intentional.
Do you feel the same way, Kara, that it was intentional since she is the UN lawyer's daughter?
I would think so, because if she had been killed, it would have made just as big a statement, if not bigger. So it would have given them added to those headlines that they wanted. But the fact that Kara was the closest and she kept ignoring Justine, kind of like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just filming.
Yeah, she didn't come over to help or even listen to her as she's saying, hey, this isn't locking. This isn't locking. What about you, Ian? Same thing? You think
I mean, it's also convenient that if she were to get her head blown off, that's less competition for Kara with Alejandro. Kara, I want to know on the panel here, Kara, why did you give Justine the defective lock?
Because the other Kara was a total bitch, so I guess I just would have followed suit.
But yeah, that the way that whole thing played out with the streaming and that and her lock, I thought that was an interesting little side plot with her motivation, and it motivates her later, because why I bring that up is later on when she does get a chance to escape, Alejandro's the only guy left in the cage, and he's like, hey, save me, and she's like, peace. She's like, your Saturday night dinner, bitch. And,
I did hate that he ruined it for the other guy that was trying to escape, though. It's kind of like, well, I'm not going to die alone. And he died from a serious attack of the munchies.
So we've got our folks in the cage, right? They see their buddy Jonah get cooked, and so they're alive for a while in the cage. and so one of the it's my favorite death. I know that sounds sick. You could find whatever, skewer me, whatever, but it's my favorite death only because it's out of nowhere, and Dawn knows the favorite death I'm talking about. She has her own. It's the girl who offs herself because of the way it's directed and edited is fantastic, because it gives you the exact impact that you want. Though I don't think it was trying to give the impact of someone giggling like a schoolgirl when it happens in the theater, like some of us may have done. Dawn was there. She can.
You squealed with delight.
He really did.
So the death I'm alluding to is one of the folks who were trapped manages to escape. One of the women, I forgot her name offhand, but she's the one with a lot of the tattoos.
Yeah, so, I think that was Kara.
Nope, that was Samantha.
Samantha. That's what it was. Yeah,
Kara's my favorite death.
Samantha is the one. She's got a bunch of tattoos, so they get this idea of distracting a guy, and she gets out and she runs. She manages to run to the boat, and we cut away. We think she made it to the boat. Awesome, great. We cut it back to the next day, and that's where the guy Alejandro set up the one guy so he wouldn't die alone. Anyway, so the next day they bring them soup, not soup, pork. That was right. It was pork parts, supposedly pork parts.
The and long so pig.
It was definitely long pig, because they're eating, and the one girl looks at the bottom of her bowl, and there's a piece of skin with the tattoo of Samantha, who I think was her girlfriend, or there was a bit of a relationship there. And she looked out, and then she looks over at all the kids who are using pieces of Samantha's skin as like wardrobe pieces.
Yeah.
And it's
Temporary
one of those things,
tattoos.
temporary tattoos. And the way Eli directs this as well, it's actually completely innocent for the kids.
Yeah.
It's horrific, but at the same time innocent. I don't know how he manages it, but at one hand you're like, oh my God, they're using her skin. And then on the other hand, you're like, they're having fun. Look at them. They're enjoying. It's like, But what I love, why I say this is my favorite death in here, is just the way it's handled, because she literally looks around, sees this. There's no hesitation. There's no setup. All of a sudden, she just smashes the bowl and cuts her throat. Like, I mean, it's like bang, bang, bang. And you're just like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's just like, whoa. And I mean, she doesn't just like nick her throat. She takes this shard and she just, and the way the makeup and everything and the way it's cut, it's like you get the scene with the kids and you're like, oh, it's kind of serene, disturbing, but you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And then she just like smash cut. And I'm like,
I think what adds to it is you have this estranged lightheartedness from the kids, and then you just have this shock factor that kind of hits you. It's very, I don't want to say stark, but it just seems to come out of nowhere. It's very unexpected. Like you've got one mood going on, and then he slaps you in the face, and it's kind of like snap out of it.
Well, because you're expecting her kind of to just break down or whatnot and freak out.
Yeah.
Not like off herself, though.
But I mean, it's kind of like, well, what would you expect from a diarrhea girl? She's just going to run.
Oh. There's that humor, because yes, the girl who cuts her throat earlier, because she got stung by a mosquito, and I think she got some kind of illness from it because she had diarrhea, something fierce, and she ends up at one point can't hold back, and she drops it in a corner of the cage.
And all the kids are laughing.
Yeah.
Well, that's one bit of restraint I think Eli Roth shows here, because I was waiting for the shot of like her bare ass hanging out and like the splatter and stuff like that or whatever. But no, they do it all very tastefully.
With sound, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, there's something going on with the suicide. Yeah. Because right before that, when they're passing the bowls around, it's like this weird yellow stuff with like chunks in it. But she's like, I'm a vegan. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? And so she starts eating it. She's eating meat, which is against her principles. And then she realizes the tattoo at the bottom. So she knows her girlfriend's dead. And then she's looking around, seeing all these other people wearing her girlfriend's skin. And what else are vegans opposed to is the wearing of, leathers for So that combined with the fever that she has and the feeling of just desperation, how she is actually cattle. And, just in that split second, you just see that spiral of like, this is all hopeless and pointless. And she just makes that quick decision and ends it. It's kind of comical, but it's also, when you step back that 1,000-foot view, it's very sad. Yeah.
I mean, to me, like Mark had pointed out, they're all very affluent people. But I don't know, it's a very cliche, but it's kind of this whole thing about eat the rich. Excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah. There is that I'm sure kind of intention as well. Dawn, what about you with that and her motivation for slicing her throat?
Well, each of them seems to be having a mental breakdown in their own unique way. Mm-hmm. And hers was just extremely, they say it's better to burn out than fade away. She definitely burned brightly for that one. One other bit of interesting trivia. They did that in one take.
Did they really?
Yep. That was one take.
Wow. Oh, that's right, because you listened to the commentary. So
Yeah.
that was one take. That was impressive.
Wow.
I mean, because they nail it on the first try. She nails it more ways than one, but still, it's like such a, and that's why it's my favorite. And when I say favorite, I don't mean I don't like the fact the character died, okay? But just the way it's handled, it's like that very brilliantly handled to get the exact reaction you want. Because then where we're going with the munchies, which I think is Dawn's favorite kill, but is they get this idea because the one guy, the Spy Kid guy, he had some marijuana from Alejandro's buddy who hooked him up with Peruvian marijuana. And he still had some. So their idea is, well, they're going to cook her. So let's stuff her with this very powerful marijuana. And so when they cook her and eat her, they're all going to get high.
Yeah.
And honestly, where they're taking the stick and shoving that baggie of marijuana down her throat, I can barely watch that scene because it makes me so squeamish.
It sounded very realistic, though, kind of like the sounds that would come from an esophagus and forcing something down it.
Yeah.
It was good. It was well done.
Yeah, because that's mostly in the sound design, because you don't really, I mean, yeah, you got her head up and her mouth open and they kind of shove it down, but then they actually cut away to, I think it was Justine's reaction to them stuffing the ganj down her throat, and you get that sound, the crunching sound, like they push, and then there's a little crunch, and you're just like, oh.
Yeah.
And then, yes, they all do get high, but then they did not think of things through. And Dodd, we get to your favorite kill, right?
Mine was Kara's.
Oh, yours is Kara.
The arrow.
Oh, the arrow. Yes. Tell them about the arrow, please.
Yeah, that is another.
I loved that.
Yeah, when they're back at the plane and she first notices people in the woods and she goes and tries to call them over, hey, help us. And she just takes a step and all of a sudden, boom, her head goes, there's an arrow in the neck. Alejandro tries to help her and boom, there's another arrow between the eyes. Yeah. It was so startling because that was not what you expected at that moment.
I mean, it was sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was going to say it was a very smooth kill. It was good. Like you can actually see how trained they are within their own environment, and how experienced they are with hunting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I didn't go back and like rewind it or anything, but I don't know if that was a CGI arrow or just done with like fancy camera work. It reminded me of the arrow in the neck from Sleepaway Camp, which I still can't figure out how the hell they did that, because it looks like the guy actually got shot through the same thing here. I'm like, that was so well done that it's surprising, not just because it's sudden, but because it looks so good. Like the only effect that I thought was unfortunate, and I mean like really unfortunate, was the CGI ants at the end with Daniel. I'm like, those look bad. Like it's not even just the fact that they're computer generated and it's obvious. They're like that doesn't look real at all.
Though that is an interesting scene because Daniel and Justine get stopped from their escape. You think they're going to escape, and they don't. But that's the whole munchies thing where Spy Kid guy gets eaten alive, like because all the villagers have the munchies. Again,
she was well seasoned.
Eli Roth's wonderful dark humor is, on one hand you're like, he goes, oh crap, they've got the munchies, and then on the other hand this horrific thing happens, but you can't help but laugh at the idea that the reason the villagers are eating him is because they have the munchies, and so you get that weird ha ha ha, ha.
But then there's the tag on the end of the scene where you got the crowd and the little kid runs out from between all the adults' legs. He's carrying a leg.
What I like about that scene is the homage to Cannibal Holocaust,
right?
Where he's doing the finger tricks.
Yes,
because that's directly from Cannibal Holocaust.
Yep. And the people on the pikes, the way they are when they find them by the plane, is also they're in the same position as the folks in the Cannibal Holocaust as well. But Daniel and Justine, they get away, or they try to get away, and then they get darted. And there's this wonderful cut to where Justine's getting prepared for the ceremony of whatever they're going to do with the blade between her legs. So they're covering her in paint and washing it and everything. Meanwhile, the head warrior is covering Daniel in this green, food or this goo or whatever. And the way Roth cuts between these two, I thought was interesting. How they're both being prepared in different ways. Mm-hmm. And I liked how he handled that. Again, people look at it going, "Oh, gross out film," but there's some smart things he does in this film, I think.
Yeah.
I really do. And and then we get Alejandro. Ian, you're a guy. I'm a guy.
Thanks. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see where you're going.
What Alejandro does, look, I'm all for clearing my mind, but his solution...
It was very unexpected, just random fapping, and it does sound squishy.
It would have been great if a spider had just jumped up on his thing and
it's such a random act. I'm like, wait, what? You're like with the rest of the people.
I think it also draws on how he really doesn't seem to be very connected, kind of like he's distanced, he's very cold, he's calculating. Yeah. So in his mind, he's doing what he has to do in order to survive. He doesn't consider, oh, well, this might be inappropriate, or I guess culturally inappropriate for the surroundings he's in. He just does this thing to relieve stress so that he can move on to the next thing and deal with it. But it just, he had a reason for it, even if, it may disgust, whoever was in the audience or who was affected, or, that hearing shemale that wanted to watch more. But I think there really was a character reason, like part of his character development as to why that was done.
I think that was part of his mental breakdown.
Yeah. That he was doing whatever he could to cope with what the horrific things he was experiencing was happening.
I gave him too much credit.
It's weird because, the next time I watch this movie, I'm going to be less suspicious of Alejandro, because I kept thinking about the movie Midsommar.
Oh yeah.
And I kept thinking that maybe he was a plant to go recruit people to he was part of that tribe to get to basically go out and get dinner. And it turns out not to be the case. Although we do get that very, very bizarre post-credits Marvel movie stinger, which I guess we can talk about in a minute. But
we'll talk about that in a minute, definitely.
The masturbating in the cage is it works, because then you got the weird bit where Daniel is like attacking Alejandro, who's still jerking off. I'm like, okay, Eli, this is where it becomes an Eli Roth movie. Let's just stop. Let's get through this and move on.
He's choking Alejandro, and Alejandro has not stopped fapping.
He's choking his chicken while getting choked. It's kind of like what do you call it? That fetish where you
autoerotic asphyxiation. Yes. Yeah.
You spit out that bit of knowledge a little too easily there, Mark.
Well, I forgot what it was called. Otherwise, I would have spat it out too. But yeah, I plead the fifth.
I'm a worldly man, okay? Anyway, back to but So we've got Justine. She manages to escape because of the little boy with the flute. She gives her flute necklace that she had from her mom, and she runs into the militia who are protecting the bulldozer guys, and they're just laying waste to the natives. And she shows up, and she's got a phone that they got from Kara's body, anyway, that they got from earlier. And she does. I loved this. I loved how this whole sequence played out, because she's holding the phone out like she's streaming, and they already knew, recognize her from before, that she was streaming, and they know that she was streaming. And before they grab the phone, she smashes it. But that's because this phone don't work. But she plays it off, and she makes it back to the States. Dawn, what'd you think of her rescue, or her way out of this situation?
I think her way out of it is the perfect way to show that she is a great final girl. Mm-hmm. She has developed so well as a character, and she has learned so much from this experience, and took all of the horrific things that happened to her, and she learned from the first time that the phones and the threats of camera and live streaming is a very powerful thing. Whether or not they could stop it, whether or not it was real, they didn't know, because it was real the first time. Mm-hmm. She was incredibly clever to do that. Mm-hmm. Some of her choices were definitely calculated. Mm-hmm. She went down there to save those people, and she saved those people.
Yeah.
Yes, she actually accomplished her goal.
Yeah.
Which is what I love, because Ian, I think you talked about it, or Cara, talk about how she was at the end, and how she was portraying the people as just this wonderful civilization that welcomed him with open arms, and didn't try to make them part of the dinner menu for Friday night. And I love that, because she suffered trauma. She saw all this trauma happen, and yet she still did this. She still saved them.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think part of it was when they were talking before the Lars, the Spy Kids boy, got killed. Right. And he tells them that they didn't actually make a difference the first time. They may have gotten rid of the first company, but a second company was coming right in behind them. They only delayed it by a couple of days. And all of them felt so betrayed and used, because all Alejandro did was line his pockets with more money.
Right.
And, she almost got killed so Alejandro could make some money. And I think that's part of her motivation for saying that. Mm-hmm. That, and the fact that she really did not want Alejandro to survive.
Which makes that post-credit sequence a little bizarre, which we'll get to in a minute. But what do you think, Cara, about her motivation of just painting the people in the... Yeah, I mean, she suffered serious trauma at these hands, but she still paints them as this wonderful tribe.
I mean, a thing that I love about it, though, is how they wanted to make her one of their tribe's people. And technically, she did wind up becoming that at the end, because she looked like them. Mm-hmm. But she also saved and protected them as though they were her own. And I don't know if you would agree with me that it's a metaphor on how, despite our differences, we can still connect and work to understand other people's, rather than just, try to crush and destroy them like, everyone has done throughout the ages.
What about you, Ian?
I see where you're coming from. I don't know quite about that, because I think she did understand those people, and understood that there's no way that they would you can't take that tribe and drop them into Brooklyn and have everything be okay. I mean, there are certain cultures that are just not going to ever mesh, and that's okay. I think I'm still conflicted about her testimony at the end because, like, those mercenaries who were contracted by the company, who it was established that they were the same mercenaries who were probably working for both companies who are trying to screw each other over. They're just in it for the money like everybody else. But I mean, they were laying waste to that tribe. And when Justine leaves on that helicopter, we don't know exactly what happened after that. I mean, they probably figured out that they weren't being filmed or live streamed. So who's to say that they didn't go and clear out the rest of that? I mean, yes, Justine is giving her testimony that there was this tribe and they need to be protected and all that stuff, but that was some time later. Like, they were not that far from where that encampment was, so I don't know if she actually saved anybody, really. I think it's an interesting idea, but yeah, I'm not sure exactly what good it did, and maybe that was what Roth was trying to get at here, because it's a very gray ending.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a gray ending. You're not sure. I wondered that as well, but thinking about it now as we're talking about it, she may have also been just trying to portray the tribe in a good light, because the most of the group, except for Alejandro, had the full intention of saving the tribe. And rather than letting their deaths, because they ended up crossing paths with the tribe because they crashed in a plane and they were encroaching on the tribe, she may have done it as well to try to make the deaths mean something more so than just, they were in the wrong place, needless to say, but with their good intentions, they just ended up being in the wrong place at the wrong time and ended up becoming food. And I feel that maybe she also tried to do that so she could still try to save the tribe, to make the deaths of those people, because of the situation they were put in, mean something more than just, oh yeah, we fell victim to Alejandro, the not so suave con artist. What do you
he was no Lady Gaga pretty boy.
No, he was not. So we've talked about it. There's an end credits sequence where it stops halfway through, which, by the way, the credits, it's the first time ever I've seen the cast have their, well, it's now called X, but their Twitter handle in the credits with their name. I loved that. I'm like, oh, okay, that's actually kind of cool. Especially considering our motivation of our Slacktivists was all about streaming and online stuff, because this is 10 years ago, folks. Okay, different world for online 10 years ago. All right. So then we get this mid-credit sequence halfway through where Alejandro's sister ends up contacting Justine and said she saw a satellite photo of Alejandro, and we see this footage of what looks like him, almost like another warrior for the tribe, and then it cuts away, and I'm like, why'd we have that?
Well, it looked like he was all dressed in black. I mean, it was very much an Avengers kind of to the point where their sister is like, I'm Alejandro's sister, Lucia, or whatever, and we need to talk. I'm like, and then they show the satellite picture of Alejandro. I'm like, what are you getting at here? I don't know that this was meant to be a sequel. I can kind of imagine Eli Roth, just kind of screwing with this and be like, hey, what if I tease this as like an Avengers movie or something? Wouldn't that be wacky? And it is, but it just kind of undermines everything that came before.
Well, it just didn't. It did not quite make sense that he would still be alive.
Yes, it does.
Oh, explain, Dawn, please.
This is the joy of listening to the commentary.
Let us know.
Definitely Alejandro. Definitely painted black. He's the new headhunter for the tribe.
But
it's crappy, but that's how Roth's mouth. That was his intention.
And
Alejandro is the new headhunter.
And that's what I got too, because the other headhunter, the head headhunter who was all painted in black, he was killed in front of Justine, in fact. And that's what I kind of gathered that he was doing in the mid-credit sequence, implying that Alejandro was the new headhunter. It's still crappy and doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Kara, what do you think of this mid-credit sequence?
It threw me off. I really didn't know what to think or make of it. And then my first curiosity was, how in the world did the sister get in contact with Justine? People don't just dox and pass around numbers, especially then at the time. But it just kind of like threw me like, what is this and why?
Yeah.
That would not be as hard to find out, because especially if the initial story about the bulldozers went viral, like CNN retweeted it,
Yep.
and then the plane disappears and goes down, there would have been a news story about like, well, they found the plane and the survivor. They probably might not have talked about everything that happened with the tribe, especially if Justine is helping to cover it up. But it would have been a story of like, oh, this activist plane that mysteriously disappeared after saving this tribe. One survivor was found. She goes to Columbia College, yada, yada, yada. So especially if Alejandro was that connected, it wouldn't have been, I think, that much of a stretch, especially if Justine's dad is a UN lawyer and all that stuff. But yeah, I don't know what she would have, like, what is the setup here? Like, she contacts Justine because they want to now go back to the jungle all alien style and see if they can rescue Alejandro and turn him back from being the headhunter. On top of that, this tribe has survived for thousands of years. They're not just going to take some literal jack off out of, one of their prisoner cages and make him the new second in command. No.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cute idea, but it's just not. Yeah.
Well, it is drawn that he's willing to do whatever it is that it takes to survive. I mean, he was eating human flesh. And then, of course, there was that lovely scene where he was wanking, but it would make sense that he would try to prove himself in some way just to avoid becoming dinner.
And that's a whole movie, like, because it's not apparent that he's ever killed anybody, and certainly not in the fashion that, the rest of the tribesmen did. I would watch that movie. I just think that it needs to be set up way before you get to this, Nick Fury nonsense.
Yeah. It's disappointing, in all honesty. We didn't need it. I don't know if he was intending. Don, in the commentary, did he mention, did he intend on making a sequel, or was it just a...
He didn't say anything at all about a sequel.
Yeah, it's just, I'm like,
I was disappointed that he survived, actually, and maybe that's what it was, is he was just kind of throwing one last thing at us, kind of like, it's not what you thought it was, same as the whole Amazon trip.
Right. That could be.
Well, I mean, I think that's, you take out that mid-credit sequence, you take out the bullshit nightmare that she has where Alejandro shows up and she turns around, she's got, again, terrible CGI teeth. I think it's just, she wakes up in the morning and she looks out her window, she sees protests, and then you have the close-up of Alejandro on the t-shirts and you just hear like them chanting as it cuts to black. That's a nice horror moment. That's almost like a Carrie style sting at the end, like he's still out there.
Yeah. Even if he's not actually alive, now they're paying homage to him and like, oh, he's suddenly a martyr.
And he's still, from beyond the grave or beyond the jungle, drawing people to go on this trip to find him now. Yeah. Like he's still recruiting for the cause.
Yeah.
Here's a question. I know we're running long here, but what the hell is the Green Inferno? Did I miss it? Is it a metaphor for the jungle? Like, I never found out. What is the Green Inferno?
I think they touched on that in Cannibal Holocaust or one of those cannibal films. But yeah, it's kind of like that area where you do have that cannibalism, as well as, it's just out in the jungle, or I'm either that or I'm just blowing stuff out my rear.
Did you get stung by a mosquito in the jungle?
No dysentery.
Okay. The Green Inferno was a film within the film of the Cannibal Holocaust, which is probably why he called it that, because in Cannibal Holocaust it was called Green Inferno. The film that they were going to go film was called the Green Inferno. So I think maybe that's what it would be. Surprised if that's what it alludes to. I don't know. Don, did he say in the commentary?
He didn't, but it would make sense to be that meta.
Yeah.
You see, that's
Again, there's so much foreshadowing and so many little details that were so specific to Cannibal Holocaust that it got a little tedious in some parts when I mean, and I've seen this movie a lot. I like this movie, but thinking about it too hard did get a little tedious because of all of the little details.
Yeah.
I've never seen the Cannibal Holocaust. That's one that is a blind spot. So I kind of want to watch it now, but I think I need to put some distance between myself and the Green Inferno first.
There was a film in '88 called The Green Inferno. It was called Paradiso Infernale initially, but it is about four friends going into the jungle to locate a lost professor, but instead off face against treasure hunters who are torturing and killing natives. So there's that too. But most likely, given the Cannibal Holocaust connections and all the other references, it's probably his reference to the film within a film in Cannibal Holocaust, I would suspect. So yeah, so there's Green Inferno, folks. Hope that whet your appetite for seeing this film. It was fun on another watch. Yes, I squeed a lot when I watched this and chuckled and smiled and rocked in my chair because it was one of those films where I never thought I'd see a film like that. And I've said this before, there's a number of films over the past 10 years that I never thought I'd see in the theater on the big screen. And I'm seeing it on the big screen in a theater. So that alone is adding to the joy. So, we'll go around final thoughts. Dawn, I know what you're going to say, but would you recommend Green Inferno?
To certain people, I certainly would. There's plenty of people I would never recommend this to, but yes.
Ian, what about you, sir?
Oh yeah, I would even recommend this to the people that I wouldn't recommend it to out of pure spite. But, yeah, I'm an Eli Roth fan, as I mentioned, and this is as much as I knew I was in for an Eli Roth movie. I wasn't expecting this, and I was very pleasantly surprised.
Awesome. What about you, Kara? Final thought with.
I mean, I thought it was great. I think everything was well developed. I don't really have too many complaints, but I would definitely recommend it. But I'm mischievous enough to not tell them anything about it. Just send them in blind so they don't know what they're in for.
It's about kids who are being activists and being tree huggers. There you go. It's kind of like Fern Gully.
Sure.
only the
minus singing bats.
The crazy bat voiced by Robin Williams decides to eat the people. Anyway, and with that, folks, this is a perfect 10. So before we get to our final closing of the episode, it is a perfect 10, which means we need to pick next month's episode. So how do we do that? Why? We go to the wheel of random here, ladies and gentlemen. So we are going to go to the wheel of random. Here it is. All right. So ones we have left, our only lovers left alive, Carrie, Machete Kills, and Oculus. So quick predictions. Dawn, what do you think it's going to land on?
Only lovers left alive.
Okay. Ian?
Carrie.
And Kara, what do you think it's going to land on?
I would go with Only Lovers just because I want an excuse to watch it.
All right, let's spin it and see what the next film will. Oh my God. Wow. Look at that. And there you have it, folks. Our film for next month in October. Let's get this straight. We have one crazy grindhouse action film, 2 horror films. So there was a 50% chance we were going to get a horror film for October. And then there's Only Lovers Left Alive, which I guess is a horror film, maybe, or romantic kind of. I'm not sure. I've actually not seen it ever.
Oh,
really?
Yes, I've never seen Only Lovers Left Alive, so I'm excited to watch this. So yeah, out of the 2 straight up horror films we could have picked, it missed both of those for October, which is spooky season. So go figure. You never
That's why I
know.
was banking on Carrie. I'm
I mean, you could
tickled
do
pink about Only
Love
Lovers
Turned
Left Alive.
Bad.
We've got to pick a theme. So,
Toxic love.
So we'll have to see what we do there for next month's theme. But it's Only Lovers Left Alive for October. So there you have it, folks. And now I know we're going long, but we're still doing our license to shill for my wonderful panel here who have been kind enough to be on my show. And so we're going to start with Kara. Go ahead. License to shill is yours.
So you can find me at YouTube, horrorretrospective.com. Wow, I can't believe I just said that. You can find me on YouTube at Horror Retrospective. Let me see. The next thing that I'm doing is this Saturday. I'm going to be discussing It Follows with Dice Rollin.
Ooh, there's an interesting film to talk about. Absolutely. So that's going to be interesting. So check that out. Horror Retrospective, great streams with interesting conversations for sure. And Dawn, I'm sure you got something to plug.
Oh, yes. You can find me at Sawdust City Fright Fest in beautiful downtown Oshkosh at the Historic Time Community Theater on October 13th, Friday the 13th, and October 14th for 2 days of independent horror fun.
Indeed. Yes, Friday night we are showing a short horror film called The Beast.
The Beast.
And then we're watching Friday the 13th Part 2. So that'll be exciting. And then Saturday, is a full slate of horror films. A lot of Midwest and Wisconsin grown horror. Not all, but a lot. So very excited for that. Spoiler Room regular Michael Vyers is going to be there talking about his film. So along with part of like half his crew. So it's going to be fun to have that. So definitely check that out. And Ian, I know you got stuff to shill, my friend. License to shill is yours.
Well, thank you. I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com and also on YouTube at Kicking the Seat. Doing I've got an interview, I think, coming up this week. I got to confirm that. But also like roundtables and stuff. I'll be doing Spotlight India this coming Saturday morning at 7 a.m. if anyone wants to rise and shine and talk about a movie that I haven't seen yet. But my co-host for that episode has seen 3 times, which is quite remarkable because it's a 3-hour film called Joanne. So yeah, excited about that.
That should be interesting as well. So check out all of that, folks. A lot of great stuff, wonderful, talented folks. And if you're at all interested at all, you can check out specialmarkproductions.com for all your Movie Man needs. We got links there for my Movie Man's Movie Minute, where I just did a Haunting in Venice review. I've got interviews coming up. I will have 3 posted by the end of this week. Tomorrow I'm interviewing, well, this will already be up, but I'm interviewing the director who did the Bring It On, Cheer or Die episode. She's got a new one coming out called The Curse of Willow Song, I think it is. I'm interviewing her, and so that'll be up. And we got a lot of other great stuff coming, as well as some coverage for Sawdust City Fright Fest, I'm sure, coming next month. So yeah, check that all out there, folks. Thank you to my whole panel here. Kara apparently had to bug out right away. So for now, we'll just say good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
I want my baby back ribs.